Coming this summer, a new age is upon us. The age of pirates.
Hey there everybody, this is Camzilla51, back again with another Transformers video review. BotCon 2014 is the year of pirates versus knights, so it only seems fitting that we take a look at the pirate that started it all, and that is Transformers Prime Robots in Disguise, Thundertron. Get ready to set sail as we dive into the recent past. Back in the thralls of the RID toy line, we got this curveball way out of left field, packaged in case with the first Ultra Magnus design, making that wave a sea of blue plastic. Magnus was a mystery because it was still unconfirmed whether or not he would show up in the show, and the fact that Thundertron had even less information on him left a lot of people with cold feet about this wave. All we really know is what the bio says. Number 1, he's a badass. Number 2, he's a pirate captain. Number 3, he's a feared dread pirate captain badass that turns into a lion. But when you get something as unique as a third faction leader, that's really all you need, isn't it? Part of me kind of prefers that I can make up stuff about him and be all like,
"Yar, where be me scurvy scallywags? Bring me that treasure!"
and stuff. So let's see what kind of character we can find in this guy. Of all the alt modes that I could have brainstormed for a space pirate captain robot, a lion would never have crossed my mind. But now that I think about it, a lion kind of works because of its fierce, unpredictable tenacity and lightning-fast power. I'm getting a heavy Zoids vibe from his winged protrusions and aerodynamic sculpture. I would have liked to see the white and blue striped motif continue a bit along the rest of this mode, but the airbrushed silver tips are an interesting touch. Little bits of gold and silver break up the royal blue here and there. Anatomically, however, this guy's a little strange in his proportions. The tail begins very early, implying where his lion bum would be, and his shoulders look a bit stiff. And indeed they are. They have no articulation above the front elbows, which limits how much you can really use this mode. These shoulders are the same bits that become the forearms in robot mode, which explains why they are unpainted and translucent due to this toy line's play feature. Some paint would have added a little extra flair here, and the same is true for the robot mode, but we'll get to that later. On a side note, you can have a peg-leg lion if you want. Yay. Thundertron does little to break away from the Cheetor-style transformation, but he adds a few modern tricks that make the shift interesting. Much like the dragons of Beast Hunters, he changes his bodily proportions from an animal to a super robust bodybuilder. Everything that was securely tabbed in his lion torso unpegs and retabs into new places for aesthetics, and the hip squeeze turns the back half into a flowing cape/skirt of robot-y goodness. The chest has just enough parts and hinges to complicate a simple idea, like the head folding down to become a chest, and it integrates very well into his new torso with very little protrusions. The mapping is simple, and the conversion doesn't take very long, but the result is very satisfying. This is the reason I bought this guy. Thundertron is a boss if I ever saw one. He's got such a fantastic and fascinating silhouette that harkens back to pirates of old, what with his peg leg, flowy cape, burly proportions, scowling beard, and pirate hat forehead. He looks like a sullen, battle-hardened royal commander of a crew of cutthroats the likes of Davy Jones and Hook. His posture and shoulder pads command respect in a way that the upcoming Cannonball doesn't, who, side note, is supposed to be the captain in this year's BotCon box set, but in a kind of Dread Pirate Roberts passed-down moniker kind of way. He's great to look at from all angles because he's very well rounded and has layers upon layers of detail, and wherever you choose to place his extra foot changes that. The only white is centralized around his head and torso, but according to the box art, it looks like he was supposed to have more in the forearms. The detail and use of multiple colors would have been fascinating, and it makes me notice the sculpting that was rather drowned out on the actual toy. Not to mention these sections are some of the coolest parts of his robot mode sculpt, and speak even more to that piratey style. I would have loved to see this done, and I don't feel the light-up transforming sword gimmick makes up for it in coolness factor. Speaking of which, let's talk accessories! Thundertron comes with a sword and a foot. I'll consider the foot as an accessory because it purposefully comes off and has options for its placement. It gives the possibility of before and after for his peg-leg injury. But I wonder why he would still carry a foot around. Was it his favorite foot? His lucky foot? Could he also prefer having the option to go footless some days? Anyways, it looks cool when placed on an arm to heighten the asymmetry, and when placed on the back as an extra layer. Some clever fans have even found a parrot mode. His sword, however, isn't so cool. I'd be damned if I said it hasn't got potential. The blade is the perfect shape, and has hours of amazing sculpt work done to it. And having a claw as the hilt piece is an interesting idea. But the gimmick screws up this one hardcore. A sword like this should be held in hand, not mounted on the side of his forearm, for one. Then again, that would have messed up with the light-up forearm gimmick that all of this toy line's Voyagers had. And the fact that this has a spring that doesn't lock in is also a recurrent problem, but that's already been grieved. If you're not shy about some customizing work, I think the best way to solve this would be to eliminate the battery box entirely, which even has instructions molded onto the presented side. Keep the blade and the claw, and mount them onto a 5mm peg. Then he can truly be a badass swashbuckling captain like he looks like he's meant to be. I imagine this guy would walk, much like Davy Jones, with an angry, asymmetrical sway as he violently struggles to compensate for his peg leg and broods with vengeance for whoever gave it to him. His voice would probably be deep and gruff,
with a slow tempo and clear diction.
Many would be displeased with the way his head is hidden and limited in range, but I think being partially covered gives a touch of high-status mystery, and I bet this character looks around more with his eyes than his head. And speaking of movement, let's talk about it. Besides his limited ball-jointed head, he's got ball-jointed shoulders, which can be accommodated in range by his articulated shoulder flaps, bicep swivels and 90-degree elbows, hinged wrists, ball-jointed hips, thigh swivels, deeply articulated knees, and a ball-jointed foot. He has no waist swivel, but that's understandable given how much his waist has to accomplish. There are times when his shoulder pads become unpegged when you try to move his arms up, but the joints are strong enough to float the shoulder in place for certain poses. His deep knee and ankle movement also allows him to kneel comfortably and naturally. His hip, skirt, scabbard, cape things are also ball-jointed to move out of the way of his hips, but since his hips don't lock in anywhere, they tend to slide out and return back to his wide line mode proportions. Also, his peg leg sometimes threatens to topple him over, and I think a tighter ankle on the other foot might have helped to compensate for that. Thundertron is a highly interesting figure to look at and fiddle with. I find the mystery of who he is that much more intriguing, and I'm dying to know. I'm curious to see if he will be mentioned at all in this year's BotCon convention set comic, since he was the first to don the new space pirate insignia that they all wear. At the end of the day, this is why I bought him, to go with those figures. However, the only reason I was able to do so from retail was because, as late as the Pirates vs. Knights theme was announced, poor Thundertron was still warming the shelves. I think the Captain is a bit underrated, and would have been much more popular if he had a cartoon or even a comic book tie-in to introduce him to us. If you're getting this year's box set, I think this guy belongs on the shelf right next to those guys. He couldn't be more perfectly placed. After all, he and Cannonball both share the TFPrime aesthetic, which makes him look like a great first mate. But for the majority of fans who aren't making that purchase, you might be hard-pressed to add him to your collection. If you only collect the show cast, like I do, he probably won't fit in very well. But if you bought other non-show characters like Dead End and Rumble, then you might find a good place for him. I feel that with a little custom paint and kit bashing, Captain Thundertron has the potential to move from an underestimated and unpopular toy to an eye-catching centerpiece. Anyways, this has been the video review for Transformers Prime Robots in Disguise Thundertron. And it is not only an age of pirates, it's an age of extinction. At the time of this recording, I've bought most of Wave 1 and plan on doing reviews, but I'm patiently reserving judgment until the movie rolls around, so I can talk about more than how cool the toys look. Until next time, this has been Camzilla51, and I'll see you at BotCon. I feel that with a little custom paint and kit bashing, Captain Thundertron has the potential.
That's how a pirate baps. That's why the rum is always gone.